Imagine a woman whose very presence is enough to end a fight. No crown, no throne, just Zainabama. When she walks into a room, arguments just stop. Her authority is a force of nature, something felt in the air itself. She created a group called the Stabilizers, not to rule, but to get things done. And they did. Suddenly, drains were unclogged, granaries were organized, and life became efficient. The people who for so long had listened to the grand speeches and empty promises of the council started to see that results mattered more than ideals. They began to turn to the Stabilizers, and by extension, to Zainabama for solutions. The council leader, Chitibar, felt this shift like a cold wind. He watched as his own influence faded, his words losing their weight against the tangible proof of the Stabilizer's success. He was becoming a relic, a voice from a time before things worked. It was the quiet seer, Yamonik, who gave voice to the growing unease. She found Zainabama one evening, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "Be careful," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves rustling. "You are becoming the answer to every fear, the solution to every problem. When one person becomes the answer to everything, the people forget how to ask questions." The first real test came swiftly. A merchant, a hoarder of grain who profited from a manufactured famine, was dragged before Zainabama. The crowd bayed for blood, their hunger turning to rage. The old laws demanded a harsh penalty, a public spectacle of punishment. But Zainabama looked at the trembling man and saw not a monster, but a product of a broken system. "Exile," she declared, her voice cutting through the noise. "He will live, but not among us." It was a choice of mercy over vengeance, a statement of her new way. But in enforcing her command, her Stabilizers tasted something new. They felt the surge of power that comes from being the instruments of order, the ones who carry out the sentence. It was a subtle but profound shift. For the first time, they weren't just fixing things, they were commanding people. Chitibar, desperate to understand his waning power, started digging. What he found shook him to his core. He discovered secret ledgers, hidden accounts, members of his own council. The very people who preached tradition and deliberation were secretly funding the Stabilizers. They were betting on the future, hedging against their own obsolescence by investing in Zainabama's efficient new order. They saw which way the wind was blowing and decided it was better to own a piece of the storm than be swept away by it. This revelation was a bitter pill. The foundation of his world was built on hypocrisy. But a system built on one person's strength is inherently fragile. Within the Stabilizers, cracks began to appear. A faction emerged, quieter, more watchful. They followed Zainabama's orders, yes, but they saw her mercy as a weakness. They believed her compassion was a flaw that would eventually be her undoing. They were patient. They were waiting for her to stumble, for the moment when her resolve would break, so they could step in with their own, much harder, vision of order. They whispered among themselves that exile was a half measure, that true stability required a firmer hand, a sharper blade. The general populace, however, was content. The streets were safe. The markets were full. The gnawing anxiety of daily life had been replaced by a comfortable predictability. Safety had replaced the messy, often inconvenient, pursuit of justice. People were happy to trade the abstract ideal of freedom for the concrete reality of a full belly and a peaceful night asleep. They didn't see the slow tightening of control. They only felt the comfort of the blanket. They chose the cage because it was warm. Yamonik saw it all. She watched the delicate balance of their society teetering on the edge of something new and dangerous. She found Zainabama again, this time by the river. "Power that begins as a shelter," the old woman said, her eyes reflecting the endless flow of the water, "will always end as a ceiling. It protects, and then it contains." The warning hung in the air. A chilling prophecy. Zainabama felt the weight of it, the truth in those words. Looking at her own reflection in the dark water, she made a vow to herself, a silent promise to the world she was trying to build. The day I become the thing I destroyed, she swore, is the day I deserve to fall. It was a noble pledge, a promise to hold herself to the highest standard. But as she stood there, a figure of solitary strength, a child ran up to her, not with a problem of state, but with a broken toy, and Zainabama, the uncrowned queen, knelt down to fix it. The people's need for her, for the safety and comfort she provided, was an unrelenting tide, and she couldn't bring herself to let them drown. The shelter she had built was becoming a fortress, and the question remained, was she the protector or the prisoner?